Alrighty, and we are live. Hey everybody, welcome to My Community Manager, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. My name is Dom, co-host here with Sherry and the MIA Brew, who is attending to real-life community manager issues. Thanks to everybody that's joining, watching live. Big props to everybody that's hanging out at CMGR Hangout, the Twitter portion that goes along with that. Big thanks to Carrie, who's hanging out over there, as well as Kristen, who is really good at multitasking. We have a absolutely fantastic panel. Really stoked to talk about Snapchat today. So with that, sort of to intro that and to kick off the intros, I'm going to throw it over to my co-host Sherry.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Brody, and I'll be the first to admit that originally I only created a Snapchat account so that my friends would stop complaining that I didn't have one. But recently I began using it actively because it was so integral for a few of my close friends. And so, as with anything new, I kind of went to Google to find accounts for those that the internet claimed were doing it right, or at the very least just interesting. And what I learned in following these total strangers that the internet seemed to love was that Snapchat can actually be a very useful tool for helping to build community. In addition to that, there's just really so many communities already in existence on Snapchat that are truly fun to join too. So today I invited Cyrene, who's one of the people that I found through those various lists, as well as Nick Cicero, who's been doing some great work with Snapchat influencers on the show, and I'll have them introduce themselves to you now.
Cyrene, I was going to let you go first, but I guess I'll go. Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Nick Cicero, and I am the CEO and founder of Del Mondo. And Del Mondo is a creator network and technology company, and we have a platform that really helps brands and influencers create content together on any screen. And we have been come to know this year for doing a lot of work with Snapchat and Snapchat influencers, and also releasing a Snapchat analytics product as well. So we have worked with some awesome people like Cyrene, with really great brands like Jolly Rancher, 20th Century Fox, Cinnabon with Dom over here, and the rest of the team at BTC. And we've got to do a lot of really cool work and learn about the space. So I'm excited to talk with all you guys today. Thanks for joining.
Cool. Well, I guess it's my turn. I'm Cyrene. I'm a Snapchat storyteller. I work with brands just telling their story. I'm also the founder of the 11second.com, which, as you know, Snapchat doesn't have a discovery platform where you can find users, and so I've created a website that shows off what the community can do on Snapchat, and then they can find each other.
Hi guys, I'm Kristen. I am community manager at Convince and Convert for Social Business Hour, several other things, and I also moderate the chat here on Fridays with the MyCMGR crew, and I'm happy to be here. And I'm actually really wanting to go back and ask Cyrene about her website. Can we do that?
Yeah, for sure. Cyrene, do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah. So
what is the website? What's the URL?
It's the11second.com, and I started it about a year ago because I found this was before Snapchat influencing was really big and no one knew each other. But one of my coworkers told me about a couple of Snapchat artists, and I started looking at their art, and I was like, wow, these things disappear and nobody gets to know them. So I started a blog called the 11 second because Snapchat is 10 seconds, and if you screenshot it, it becomes the 11 second. I started featuring artists there, and then these artists started, getting to know each other. We created like a Facebook group. We started hanging out, and we became really good friends. And it's basically just a website where you can find other people that are doing cool stuff on Snapchat. Snapchat doesn't have that feature yet, and so I think this website is helpful. To other Snapchat artists who wants to collaborate, and also maybe to like agencies and brands who are looking for Snapchat artists and there's no way to like find them.
That is really, really awesome. That's so cool. And like I said, everybody, my name is Dom. I work for BTC Revolution's co-host here. I really want to jump into the first question because I think this is just going to be awesome. And this can almost sort of be a two-parter when you think about working with brands, as some of us have, or then just yourself. What is your sort of Snapchat story? Like, why did you even start using it in the first place? Ready, go.
My turn? Okay, so
anybody, just jump on in.
Okay, so I started using Snapchat originally like anybody, just as a picture messaging app, and it's usually just like a way for my coworkers to like have fun in meetings, and we would draw on top of each other and just do fun stuff to like just communicate. And then I don't know, like I started doing, I guess the thing that probably got me the most recognition is when I did celebrity selfies, and like everything on Snapchat is word of mouth, and so some people screenshot, put it on forums, and then a blog, I think A+, got one of my Snapchat and decided to do a feature on me, and I guess that kind of started everything, and then got more recognition of doing like Snapchat art, and that's basically how I got started, and then I started collaborating more, and yeah.
Great. I started on Snapchat right around the same time that Cyrene started talking about the 11 second. I actually had exposure a few years before when 16 Handles did the first ever Snapchat promotion ever, and we wrote about it on Social Fresh at the time. And doing that, I kind of kept in touch and kept on Snapchat, and that was in 2013. And so then when we started Del Mondo, one of the creators that was introduced to us early on was a Snapchatter by the name of Evan Garber. And Evan really opened my eyes to new ways of using Snapchat, and it kind of caught me back up to speed, and how there was this really emerging movement that there were creators like Evan and then Cyrene who were actually telling cool stories in ways that most people weren't using Snapchat. And not only that, but they were starting to actually get really popular and actually like generate a significant amount of traffic. And so for that, we kind of having been doing influencer campaigns with other platforms, we jumped right into Snapchat. And I was introduced to Cyrene really early on, about this time last year, actually, I think. And from that on, it's just kind of been a really fun ride and helping to grow this community of Snapchatters who really, it's quite a new thing, right? The idea of storytelling on Snapchat has only been around for about a year, maybe a little bit more now. And now we're just starting to see these storytellers like Cyrene and others really come to life in very unique ways. And it's their time to shine, I think, on Snapchat.
Awesome. Oh, is that awesome count one now? Anyway, I started using it because everybody else was, or I thought I was missing something, and when I first started using it, I really super did not like it. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but I just was like, what the crap is this? I don't know how to work it. How do I get to the people that I want to follow? Like, I couldn't even figure out the UI, and so I didn't really like it at first. But I got involved just because others were doing it, and I wanted to check it out. I do love it now because I figured out how to work it, and I found cool people to follow like you guys. But yeah, I was kind of a bandwagoner on my end.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I mean, I jumped in. I'm any sort of new app nerd. So when something new comes out, I'm like, oh, I have to try that. Like I was fully on the Elo train when all that kind of stuff. It's just like let's see what it's like. And I think that I just sort of let it go dormant for a while because not a lot of people were on it. Whenever I would tell anybody, I was like, oh, you got to check out Snapchat, and they're like, that's just where dudes send picture of their junk and the picture goes away. Like that's sort of an idea that it was just sort of that. But then when I started to see more storytelling that took place on it, and I love that Cyrene, you call yourself a Snapchat storyteller. I think that's just one of the coolest things is the ability to tell stories. I started to get more and more interested, and then I think this is probably going to be a question that we're gonna lead to. But I remember when I first saw Taco Bell's Snapchat story, that's when I was like, oh, like this is how it can be done, and people can actually tell stories, and brands can tell stories in a more engaging way like that, that seemed really cool to me. So that's when I was like super hooked. So that sort of moves in. You know, we've sort of talked about this, but when you guys are sending out your own snaps, what kind do you see get the most interactions from your followers? Like what tends to get, you know, the back and forth engagement as opposed to like the one-to-many?
For me, everybody wants to get their 5 seconds of fame, and so whenever I repost their reaction, or whenever I do maybe like a drawing lesson, and then they would draw back and they want to see it on my story, and so that gets the most interaction. And I like how you say that brands and storytellers are using it in an innovative way. I mean, like Snapchat, there's so many interactions that you can do on Snapchat that you can't do on other social media, such as, you know, like in other social media, most of the viewers are just passive viewers and they just watch it. But on Snapchat, they can be part of your story. So basically, create the story with you. And so I think that's really interesting. And, you know, like, and it's disappearing. It's, you know, 24 hours, and so they'll respond right away. And also, like, I figure, like, there's a lot of people that figure out ways, you know, to really, you know, take advantage that it's on a phone. And so, like, there's screenshotting games, there's tapping games, and everything that you can't usually do on other social media, you can do here to make it more interactive.
Yeah, I mean, following up with what Cyrene is saying, I think that dancing around that, one of the most important things and one of the most successful types of snaps that we're seeing right now than the interactions is really ones that are done very consistently. And so the thing about Snapchat content that is so different than Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram is that it's not passively loading in the background. Cyrene kind of mentioned that before. It's already opt-in content. You have no way of knowing what Cyrene is making today unless you know that you like her stories and you open that story. So there is no, you know, kind of preconceived notions. You're really trusting in that relationship that the story that they're going to tell is unique and is exciting. And so one of the reasons and one of the ways that we see much more, you know, storytellers doing a great job in building an audience is by maintaining that consistent content and knowing how to set up their audience to expect that. So, you know, Cyrene is one of them, and others, they're not just kind of posting every single day random types of content. Not only are they posting content to kind of keep people entertained, but they're also very much setting up these new opportunities. Like Cyrene mentioned before, her celebrity selfie series, it's not just an ad hoc, here's a selfie one day. She lets you know that she's going to be telling a story about these selfies, and it's actually something that you're meant to consume in one sitting. And so I think that the really interesting thing about the stories that are getting the most interactions from people is that they're ones that aren't just kind of thrown out there ad hoc. They're ones that are very carefully planned, promoted, and executed, not just one day for 24 hours, but oftentimes, and Cyrene could probably say that, she's promoting days leading up, and other storytellers like her are promoting days leading up to potentially a weekly story that they do every single week.
I know personally I love the weekly stories that you have those storytellers tell. I know one that I got turned on to because of Sherry was this guy in Los Angeles named Tristan Tales, and he does like his top 5, and then to interact with people, he goes, show me what your number 6 in this list would be. You know, so he like sort of has like that double where it's like, all right, so I'm going to do the same thing every single week, but then you're also going to get a chance to interact with it. You know, that kind of stuff is really awesome. So
yeah, well, if you're a brand, what you're looking for is creators who actually do have those regular types of content series that you can set up. You know, one of the first big campaigns that we ran at Del Mondo on Snapchat was with JBL Audio, and we used Mark Kay, who really had the first talk show on Snapchat, where every single Monday he would host an interview series and bring a new person on, and that is almost like a podcast or a television show that a brand could really be a title sponsor for, and JBL was brought into that experience, and it did really, really well. But those are other ways that brands could tap into storytellers without trying to like come up with their own campaign ideas. Maybe they can just fit into the natural story that they tell to their audience too. And that's an interesting way that you can think about getting in there as a brand potentially.
Awesome, good stuff. Oh, awesome count goes up again. All right, so one thing that I do want to say is if you guys are on Twitter and you have any questions, Cyrene and Nick are obviously just a fount of information here, so if you have any questions for them, make sure that you tweet to my CMGR, so that way we can pull your questions in and they can answer all of your wonderful burning Snapchat questions. Let's jump into question 3. And we sort of touched on this, but let's see if there is anything else we could sort of figure out or anything we haven't hit on. What do you think the best ways are, or even some new ways that you've seen to incorporate your followers into your snaps? So like you can dig in a little bit deeper on this if you want to, like what you've seen and what works best.
I guess like what you said about Tristan Tales about having the followers continue your story. I've tampered into that also. It's like I've had like campaigns where it's like, hey, finish the story, give me your reaction, I'll post it. And so they're no longer just an audience, they're a continuation of the story. And I think that's the best way to incorporate an audience. And and that does take a lot of time. If you don't have a lot of time, get them involved in your stories, maybe like screenshotting. There's games where you can flash different images on the screen, and then if they screenshot, it stops the screen, and then that's what, it's kind of like a gamification of Snapchat, having them tap, purposely to go on to the next step, making it seem like they're pushing a button to proceed. Something like that to give it more interaction, and they're not just staring on the screen, they're actually interacting with it, they're being part of it, and that's how I get viewers and my followers to become part of the Snapchat story.
I would kind of agree with Cyrene for the most part. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I think that really, in my experience, the ways when you bring the users into the story, like Cyrene did a great campaign for us with Tiger Beat magazine when we relaunched Tiger Beat, and she made these games that users would screenshot and send back to us, and that type of feedback and that type of interaction that you're bringing, that just doesn't happen like on Twitter. It doesn't happen on Instagram. You don't get people to like pick up your tweets and scribble all over them and make things about them and then send them back to you. Those types of like call and response ideas, they just don't typically happen on other types of platforms, and it's really cool when you can bring them in such a way where it's like an activity book sometimes when I look through your stories, Cyrene, because I can do like a maze, like you did a great campaign for us with Jolly Rancher this week, and you made a really fun maze, and you had users screenshot and try to like solve the maze and doodle it and send it back to you. So those types of things, they're not only like building a consumption time on the platform where people are like sitting on Snapchat watching your content or watching that branded content, but it's also getting them to take actions off of that on their own time. I mean, these users are going to take time, and sometimes when you have them complete these drawings, they're pretty intricate that they sent back to you, stuff that couldn't have taken just 2 seconds of a scribble. So you're seeing this relationship really develop and create a stronger bond. I've been working in social 10 years professionally, and I've never seen a platform build such a true bond in real time in the same way, like when Cyrene will put something out there and her users will fix it and add to it. So it's really cool.
I think that's really interesting too when you're talking about like the time aspect of it, because I mean you think about other platforms, when we're talking about like maybe somebody sending a tweet back or you're sending back a picture or hitting retweet or like that takes less than a second for somebody to do that. But you see the intricacy, and somebody's taking like if you get somebody to spend 30 seconds doing something for you online, that's a really big deal. Like that's one of those things. It's like if you hug somebody for 8 seconds, you have a deeper bond. Like an 8-second hug feels like an eternity, but you're having somebody sit down at their phone and do something for you for a really long time. That's really good. Never really thought about it like that. So
even a screenshot. Think about the action required to take a screenshot of a snap on your phone. That's extra effort in and of itself that you don't do on other platforms often. So there's just far more, and Cyrene said it great, like there's more consumption interactions on Snapchat than really any other platform that we've seen.
One thing that I think is really cool as far as incorporating other people into a story is when people send video snaps and somehow those get put into the story. I don't know how people are doing that, but it's really cool. I think it's fun to see other people pop up that way in the story. If anyone wants to tell me how to do that, that'd be great.
I think there's different ways to do it, but But a lot of people, I mean, I guess like the interaction in it is like they get their fame and stuff. But it's a little bit more complicated to do in this hangout to explain how that actually works.
Okay, that's for later then. But just so you guys know, I would totally do that if I knew how.
Yeah, we'll do another hangout about that.
All right.
One thing I did see, which is really interesting to incorporating your followers in there, and obviously you need to really trust one of these people. But I actually had two friends. One's Jason Yarbrough, and the other's Vincenzo Landino, and they actually did. I think Yarvi's actually doing this all week, but they did like a snap swap. So essentially, like they took each other's logins, and then they like shared their own day, but underneath the other person's name to like sort of be like, hey, this is somebody else, and it's like brands doing that would obviously get a lot more tricky. Influencers doing that would definitely, I think, be able to work. I think about, Cinnabon had Danny and Evan work, one day for him out here in Seattle, actually. I think that would be a cool thing to have flip, especially if it's like, you have a Snapchat artist and a Snapchat entertainer. Those types of things are really cool to be able to do.
Yeah, I've also seen Pinky and Danny P. Brooks, I believe it is, do a weekly, I think it's called the Nonsense Challenge. I always see TNC, so I can't remember exactly what it stands for. But they do such a good job like cross-promoting each other in the challenge and then bringing in other people. Sometimes it's like Team Kitty versus Team Dog, and you snap it if you're Team Kitty or capture it if you're Team Dog, and send them different things in return. And other times it's just like challenges for them against each other, like whoever loses has to do something, or they challenge each other to make the better sandwich, or whatever it is. And so it's really fun to see people get involved through their weekly challenges, but they're constantly cross-promoting each other because of that too.
Yeah, the takeover idea is something that we see happening all the time, and quite often. And it's not just even about influencers. And so some campaigns, like we mentioned with Jolly Rancher before, or Tiger Beat, an influencer might take over that brand's account, and that's something that we're seeing happen regularly. But if you're somebody that maybe doesn't want to work with influencers, or maybe you're a big brand that has spent a ton of money on other events and partners and activations, there's so many other ways where you can bring that into your Snapchat. Spotify does a really great job of giving their channel to artists. And when artists come and visit the Spotify headquarters, they get the full access to take over the account and create the snaps however they want. And that brings that takeover and collaboration into like a daily content strategy, while really taking resources that you probably are already paying money for. And so I think that there's a really cool way to figure out how do you actually use what you already have and what you've built equity-wise on other social platforms to really drive a lot of people, a very intense consumed audience, to one spot. I mean, we're seeing snaps get 10 to 40 times more engagement and reach than an individual tweet. And we all know how short the half-life of a tweet is. We're seeing people, hundreds of thousands, in many cases millions of people viewing somebody's individual snap, and that person who might have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers on Twitter might get a couple thousand impressions on that tweet. So people are actually like driving and staying consumed there. And so if you're a brand who's built all this equity in so many other places, you can use that and tailor that right to your Snapchat creative.
So good. There's so much awesome stuff that's happening right now. I love it. So this sort of leads into, we've talked about a lot of really cool like little tips and tricks and different things, but at least for me, and like what Sherry was saying, like it was kind of hard, it's kind of hard to find people at first. It's kind of hard because there's not a lot of tracking there. There's not like a discover feature like you were saying, Cyrene. When did you guys first really realize that you could build a community on Snapchat? Because it seems like it's kind of hard because there's not a lot of the stuff there. When did you first really realize, like, hey, you can actually build some people around this?
I guess it just kind of happened. I mean, it just started out with a small group first, and then we're doing collaborations, and then like we would shout each other out, we would make stories together, and then eventually other people that follows them are like, hey, how can we get in it? And then the communities kind of grew around, and so that's how it kind of happened. I mean, there's not really a way like, hey, we built this community on purpose. It happened around it.
Yeah, I would say that I discovered that Snapchat could be a great community tool when I met Cyrene, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I met She and Evan were the first two Snapchat artists that we had signed on Del Mondo that we brought in that were really starting to grow on that platform. And we talked like every day about all these different types of things, about how certain people were starting to get hit up by brands, but then there were opportunities and how they were doing all these different things, and it started to grow. And then when I saw that she and so many other people were seeing so much success individually with audiences, that's when I saw the real power of that. And I think that it was still so new, but as I got to know Cyrene and all these other great native Snapchat artists, we have built a community and a bond around that. Think about it. We first met in December and January, and everybody was talking, and then it wasn't until April where we actually met in person, and we ended up doing events. And now, like, you and other snappers are flying all over the country to meet with each other and kind of connect and create content for the good of all of these people. So I think that it was really cool, and I think that we're really just starting with this new platform. And I've said this, I know, Cyrene, to you, but to a lot of other snappers as well, is you guys are really the first wave of this new type of storyteller, and it's really exciting to watch that grow because it's very new so far.
I like that. I like that a lot. So, obviously we have that sort of happening organically. Now, as you guys have sort of played with it a little more, this moves into the fifth question. What can you do? What can a brand do? What can an influencer do to help your followers connect with each other? Like, obviously, we've talked about a lot of ways that you can connect with them and sort of build that relationship. But when we talk about community, a big part of it is obviously connecting with each other. How can you really facilitate that via Snapchat?
You're muted.
Cyrene, if you're muted if you're talking.
Are you saying like the brands, not brands talking to the followers, but the brand's followers talking to each other, or could you rephrase the question?
Yeah, sort of like that. Like, how can, obviously it's one thing to have people connected to you, but like to sort of have that growth of them all sort of doing their own collaborations with each other. Like, is there a way that like the brand or you can sort of facilitate that?
I guess like you can do it by the way you tell the story. Maybe have a story that says, tell your friends about this. And whenever it's so much different, like on Twitter than or other social media. Well, I don't know why we're always picking on Twitter, but I guess like whenever you say it on Snapchat, it seems more authentic. It seems like you're having a conversation, so people are more apt to just do it. Like whenever you say, hey, can you tell a friend about my story, they'll actually go tell a friend and then message you, hey, I told this many friends. And so that's one way to grow your brand and have them talking about your promotion and how to spread it.
Do you ever encourage people to send in snaps like with their handle on it too, or interview maybe different followers just to kind of help them get to know each other? I guess it's kind of more where I was going with that.
Yeah, definitely. I have a separate Snapchat account called the 11 Second, and I basically, it's basically like a shout out. I also shout out on my own account, and whenever I find a cool Snapchat artist, I would say, hey, check out this Snapchat artist, or this Snapchat artist is doing a collab. Go check it out if you want to join. Also on my separate account, the 11 Second on Snapchat. Like I post collaborations there, a list of like credits on who to follow because they did this collaboration. I guess that's something that you can grow within Snapchat, and you don't have to use like an outside source, because it's really hard to get people outside of Snapchat. They want to do everything within Snapchat, and it's a really interactive environment that way. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does for sure.
Yeah, I would dovetail on that and definitely say that the takeover type mentality that a lot of brands are starting to pick up on more and do more of now is definitely a great way to do that. Like I mentioned with a Jolly Rancher, they brought 7 Snapchat influencers to each do a weekly takeover over the course of 2 months, and so something like that, they're giving a lot of exposure to a lot of these creators just for who they are and letting them kind of share their story with their larger audience. And so I think that for a brand, you definitely could a brand could definitely rely on a strategy of promoting creativity and promoting creators, and actually use their Snapchat channel as just a way to celebrate great video, great creativity, and maybe every now and then you throw in some brand messaging. there's a really great opportunity to actually use what the platform is designed for and surface some of the best stories that right now you don't get to find on Snapchat natively. Like Cyrene mentioned, there is no discovery tool. So anybody who needs to find one of these Snapchatters, you pretty much have to just tell by word of mouth. And so if a brand were to come in and celebrate so many great creators and put them up on a pedestal, it's another great opportunity for that brand to build a strong relationship with that audience and expose them to new people and have them be like the cornerstone of that new relationship.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's really great. I've seen that happen a lot. Like I said, originally I searched Google for some lists of people to follow, and now I've just been like finding people through other people that I was already following as they promote each other and bring each other in. So it's really cool to like connect with other people that they know and then see. Like you guys were all hanging out in New York recently. I think I was already following every single person separately and didn't even realize they were all connected, but I had just like trailed through everyone at some point. Cool.
Awesome.
Are you good,
Well,
Tom?
yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay.
I just had to switch my phone. I actually wanted to bring in a question really quick, and we sort of talked about that. And this is something I'm really interested in too. So Emma out there, she wants to know a little bit about how Snapchat campaigns are tracked. Some hashtag sexy spreadsheets love, but can any of you guys sort of tap on and touch on that? Other than just seeing, hey, there's this many eyeballs. Like, how are you guys really tracking that?
Yeah, Cyrene, you mind if I take this one? Cool, thank you. So, unfortunately, Snapchat has not yet gotten to the level of analytics tracking like we've become used to on some of the other social platforms. But actually, there's quite a bit more if you dig deeper below the surface. And so, we've been quoted in a lot of articles that have gone out about this idea of screenshots. And so, some people send screenshots, and that's a great way to do it. But if you think about it, if you're a brand, you can look at a lot of different things. You can look at the total number of unique viewers of your story. You can look at the individual views per each frame of that snap. You can find out the completion rate. So how many people, if you've created a story, how many people have actually viewed that all the way through? So if you think about it, if Cyrene were to make a story that's 10 snaps long, that are 10 seconds each, that's 100 potential seconds that somebody can view that piece of content. And so all of these are other data points that aren't necessarily surfaced right on its face on Snapchat. And you as an individual can go and do the manual work yourself, or you can work with a software provider like ours. And what we are doing is we're going in and we built our own API, and we're pulling out every hour and able to timestamp and date stamp that for people so they can actually visualize the growth and the consumption of that content day over day, week after week, because that's really what's going to show you success, is what's that growth over time. And so for a lot of our customers and for the brands that we see with doing the most success, it's showing us obviously these consumption metrics, which is very important for that date and time, but then bringing in what's happening on other social platforms and then measuring the growth of their audiences on Snapchat over time and how that's growing as well. It's not an easy process. It's not a perfect science yet. I know that we've been a little spoiled as marketers because Facebook and Twitter have really rushed to meet our demands, and Snapchat's kind of new. But if you're going to spend the time doing this stuff on Snapchat, you should spend the time to measure and test your results. I think that's the most important thing to take out of this, is set a goal and then take the time to actually go back in and see if you can figure out a better way to prove that goal. And it could be product feedback. I know that you and maybe some of the community manager viewers probably know Chris McEulin. Chris is somebody who's doing like polling on his Snapchat account and bringing product feedback into his company. And so that is the specific goal that he could be setting, is getting feedback from a product on a specific audience that's like Snapchat. And so if you don't set your goals and actually figure out what it's going to take to achieve that, you're never going to get started in measuring any success on Snapchat.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's important to remember, no matter where you're building community or whatever you're doing with any tools, you need to know what your goals are so that you can figure out how to measure them accordingly, so you know that you're accomplishing what you're trying to do.
For Rizzle. All right, awesome. So you know what? Let's bring in one more question, also from Emma. Emma's on a question spree today. So By the way, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to tweet them at us. She'd like to know what kind of demographics you guys really see with your communities. Have you guys noticed any specific traits in that, or trends, or whatever you guys are looking at there?
I mean, for me, the only way that I can actually see like who my audience are is when they snap me back. They snap me a selfie, and so I see a very young demographic. But there's also like the older demographics that are slowly getting in here. I mean, when I first started Snapchat, it was really just really young people who adopted the platform first. But as I get into it, there's people who are like professionals, like Snapchatting me, saying, "Hey, I like your Snap." It's like I want to be part of your Snap, and I think the audience are growing now compared to where it was a while back.
Yeah, we tell people that Snapchat is very much like Facebook in the fact that it's aging up, and it definitely started as a young person's platform, but it's rapidly growing and expanding with the addition of Discover and the types of publishers that they've selected, their live partnership selection. You see that Snapchat themselves is also not targeting a too young audience. I would say that the sweet spot for Snapchat right now is females 18 to 24, but that's rapidly growing, and I would even say that you're looking at both ages up to 30 are really a good Snapchat. So 18 to 30, in my opinion, is a really good Snapchat age right now, as well as if you're kind of like a consumer brand. So it definitely skews younger, but it is something that's not like, we're not talking 13, 14, 15-year-olds anymore. Like maybe if we had this conversation last year, we would be having a different one.
This question actually isn't in there, but I just want to ask you guys. So obviously Snapchat does have that, not the main Discover feature, but like the super, the pretty expensive daily story, pay-to-play sort of thing there. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Like, what do you guys just think of it? Like, do you
Which one, the live stories?
No, like like when you go into Snapchat and the Discover channels, all that kind of stuff. Like, what do you guys really think of that? Like, I know that I actually talked with somebody randomly that works for Vice, and I know that they have like an entire team that works on putting out that content every single day. Yeah. But I also know that it's super expensive, and not a lot of brands can necessarily afford that. Like, what are your guys' thoughts on that? And do you think that that's going to stay the way that it is, or is that going to change at all?
I think that Snapchat Discover is an interesting feature right now. It's definitely an interesting partnership. I also think that it's really just in its infancy. I think that it's going to change significantly next year. I'm sure that the cost will come down a little bit, but probably not too much, because there is really good value that you're not able to get in other places, and they're opening up new audience targeting opportunities to like serve your ads across multiple channels now. So there are expanding features, but I think once again, when you look at those live stories, they're very one-dimensional. You have, as of right now, you can't click through those stories. You can't visit that brand's Snapchat account from that story. It's very limited. And many advertisers have turned off sharing, where you could actually share that story and make it like a fun game. So I think that there's a really huge opportunity that's being missed by brands on Discover, and maybe that's a publisher problem, maybe that's a brand problem. I'm not really sure. We hear it from both sides. I still think there's a huge...
You said that some of them turn off sharing. Why would they do that?
Well, I mean, I guess the idea is that if I'm a brand, I don't want somebody drawing like dick pics all over my, my beautiful, pristine ad that I've created. And I guess I can't blame them, but that at the same time, that's a little bit of an antiquated way of thinking, as opposed to like, if it's native for the platform for people to share Discover stories and draw on them, why would you not figure out a way to integrate that in your ad? And some have, but I think that those are the innovations that have been limiting so far, and we'll see that grow in the future. If you have a lot of money to spend and you're doing it as part of like a complete Snapchat buy, I think that there's other ways. Like, for example, you could reach out to Del Mondo and say, hey, I want to buy a video ad on Snapchat, and we would work with you guys and hire somebody like Cyrene or like Harris Markowitz, who works with us, and actually create really unique vertical video content that's very native to the Snapchat platform that you're serving through paid channels. But then somebody like Cyrene can actually be there when it says, hey, snap Cyrene to see the rest of the story, or to continue that as well. And so I think that those are really, that's where I believe that the future of paid media on Snapchat is going to go, is really tying that back to the story feature as much as possible.
I do. I do like what you said about tying it into the story feature, and it's not just. At first, whenever I saw the Discovery Channel, it seems like a separate app, and it didn't seem like it would tie in. But whatever you said, having them share it, tie back in the channel, I think that would actually help with that. I mean, in the beginning, it was more of like repurposed content from another website. It's like, but I think as I see it more, they're getting more exclusive content on the Discovery Channel, which it should be because Snapchat gives it the. Whenever I think of Snapchat, I think of exclusive content. I get to see it first. It's raw, and so what I think that the future of the Discovery Channel and what would entice me to check it more often and be more interactive with it is that I want to get exclusive content. I want to be able to interact with it differently from other platform, and it's not separate from my experience with the story feature. So yeah.
Good stuff. And by the way, if anybody is playing the dick pic drinking game, I think we're at 1 now, so had to get 1 in there for the Hangout. Thanks, Nick. Now, here's just a fun question for you guys. And you can get super personal with this. It could be with a brand that you worked with or just you personally. But what is your favorite Snapchat moment? Like, what is the one where you're just like, and you're like, why do you love Snapchat? This is the one that you go to, and you're like, because this was awesome.
Do you want to go first, Nick, or I'll just go. Okay, so my favorite Snapchat moment was when I got to meet all the Snapchatters during that time that we met in April in New York, and I think that was like it's a reality check, like this is real, and it was so weird because we were like, oh, so we traveled this far and we took time off our day to meet strangers we don't know from the internet and hang out for a few days, and so that was really weird. And I think that was my favorite Snapchat moment, was to see these people live and the real, and we just had fun during that time.
I would agree and say that. Obviously, Del Mondo sponsored a cool happy hour event that Cyrene is talking about, that we brought everybody together the day before the Shorty Awards, and that was really awesome to see. I think that for me, it's so tough. I think it's a combination. My favorite Snapchat moment, personally, is every time that a story, one of these really crazy stories, goes out there and it blows up. So my all-time favorite moment, while working with Evan on our first JBL campaign, was amazing, and we got to do it very much together. I would have to say that when we did the Bad Blood story, Cyrene, and you'll know what I'm talking about, that's when I really, and that was like 6 to 7 months in, but just a backstory is Cyrene led a group of Snapchat artists who all collaborated, and they each created a frame of Taylor Swift's Bad Blood music video, and they did it in Snapchat. And then they cut all of those videos together into like one super cut and made like a Snapchat music video of Taylor Swift's Bad Blood. And it was amazing. And it had so many great people. And I think that when I saw that go out and I saw like all of the fans' reactions to it, and we put it up on Tiger Beat and they shared it out and it got a lot of really great attention. And I think that when I saw something like that, it really allowed me to like rethink and say, like, there's definitely something, not just to having one influencer do a really great job and create really unique content, but in numbers. And so pretty much from then on out, I don't think that I have ever gone to a brand and offered them one Snapchatter. I've always wanted to bring multiple people together, because it just seems to me like it's way more fun when people do it together, not by yourself. And so for me, like, getting to work with people together in a group, every time we get to do that is really my favorite part.
And I agree with that, working together with people. Like, when we worked with you for the, when we essentially just launched Cinnabon Snapchat, and then, like Evan and Danny were out here, and, they went to the UW game, and they were in, hanging out in the tailgate. That was really fun also, because of the fact that not only did you have Danny, who is just really funny, and he can talk with anybody, but then you have Evan, who is just like a great artist and can draw and all that. But then at the same time, we were bringing in actual like snaps from the community and putting them to like this one massive story that everybody got to share, and it was all around the birthday, and free Cinnabons for everybody across the country. Like that was really awesome, because it's like you, me, and all of us together, sort of a feel. So one thing I do want to say, my personal favorite is also Carrie's personal favorite. It's when I discovered the basic filter. So there's a restaurant in Marina Del Rey that Sherry takes people to, and it's called Cabo Cantina, and it just happens to fall where there's a filter that says basic. And it was probably one of my favorite things in the entire world, so much that it was actually, I screenshotted it and used it as my profile picture on Twitter and Facebook for a while. So yeah,
Well,
that's pretty awesome.
Continuing the trend of Snapchat moments that involve multiple people, I've always enjoyed the ones, I don't have a specific one that's my favorite, but I always enjoy the ones where like two people that I know who don't live near each other are doing snaps together because they're visiting, or just snaps from a conference or an event that involves a lot of people. We had a lot of fun out at Social Media Day San Diego back this summer, just shenanigans on the Snapchat, but it was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of people that you wouldn't normally see together. So I enjoy that kind of stuff too.
All right, I have sort of another question, just because when you're talking about like people visiting and conferences and stuff, what do you guys think is the appropriate length for a Snapchat story? Because I know you could definitely lose people, and I know some people that put out like 450-second Snapchat stories in a day, and I'm like, I'm not gonna watch all of this. But it's like, what do you think is like sort of the sweet spot there?
I think it also depends on like how you tell the story, and it's also served in chunks of information. Maybe like in the beginning of the day, you can put a 100-second story, and then maybe wait a few hours to do the other chunk of the story. So people consume in chunks of information, and then those two 100-second stories could be 200 seconds, since they are related together. But it's all about like the delivery, when you deliver it, how you chunk it. And also like Snapchat took away the counter, and so you really don't know how long the story is, and so you need to really trust that person to see if the content's going to be good, and then you just keep watching it and see how engaged people are going to be.
I don't know if there is a sweet spot, but I would say that we try to look at stories that are like a minute to 2 minutes long. Depending on how many frames there are, and that obviously is going to depend on how you're using the platform too. Some of the things that Cyrene is figuring out in the way that she's telling her stories does come from a fact of stacking multiple frames, or making sure that people quickly skip through one frame faster than the other to get to the next image to make sense as part of the story. So you're never going to really know how many frames, but I think that the best way to do it is take a look at your stories. If you export your story file, you can actually see how long your full story was. And so I know that like you could keep track in your head maybe, but that sometimes gets difficult. So one cool tip is that if you have a story that does really, really well, save those stats so you can check them out later, or export the video so you can go back and look at it and try to break it down and see, why did people like that story? Was it longer? Was it shorter than maybe some of your other ones? So exporting is a really quick and easy way to figure out how long your story was.
All right, got a question. Couldn't find the unmute button. All right, so this one is from John. Is there a stigma surrounding Snapchat? Is the stigma surrounding Snapchat too strong for a business to successfully exist on the platform?
I think the stigma is too strong for businesses to get on platform in general. And so I would say that Snapchat is just one of 10 different platforms right now that you could make the same argument about. I would say that is the stigma surrounding Periscope, meaning that it's ridiculously live and always on, too strong for a business to successfully exist. I would say that you ask that question about every new platform. But I think that if you're talking about like the nudie pic type stuff, the teen type stuff of Snapchat, I think that will be smashed within the next couple months, if not already. I think that Snapchat has done a really great job of dispelling that myth that that's all that's going on there, because it's really not.
Yeah, I agree. Like every new platform, Facebook was just to in the beginning was just to hook up with other college people, but now businesses use it, everybody use it. Like social medias start out with these weird stigmas, but then eventually grow out of them. And I think Snapchat has, if not already grown out, a lot of brands are already adopting the platform.
Sweet. Short and sweet. All right, let's have another one. John is actually challenging Emma's crown as the question master today. But this one, if your brand is outside, if your brand's target demographic exists outside of millennials, do you still see it being useful? I know you were talking about that 18 to 30, but let's say it's a little bit older. Is it still useful?
I would say that your target audience is probably, if that's outside of it today, and it's I guess if your target audience is older than the Snapchat audience or the millennial audience today, you might want to use it to get on there, maybe not as a business, but maybe yourself to do research to figure out when your new customers, when that next demographic reaches your target age and your sweet spot, they're going to be different. They're not going to be the same type of consumers that you're dealing with today. And so I think that doing some knowledge and doing some education and getting in there and seeing how they're talking today can do wonders for you as you educate yourself for that when that consumer hits your sweet spot. Just ignoring platforms that have clearly taken the world by storm and 6 billion video views a day. It's not something that you just ignore, but that doesn't mean that you jump right in and set up a Snapchat strategy for every single brand. Be mindful of it.
Mm-hmm. Agree. And also, like, if you're a brand with a lot of influence, I mean, like, maybe you are the one that can influence the older people, can go in your Snapchat. I mean, NASDAQ has a Snapchat, and I don't know what their audience is. It might be a little bit older. If they have that much influence, they can actually bring in the people to experience Snapchat and then grow the age range. And so you're not limited by what Snapchat already has. If you're a brand, you do have influence. You can bring people in the app.
Such a good point.
Fan-freaking-tastic. This is really good stuff, guys. Okay, question 7. We got about 10 minutes left, so we got 2 questions. So if anybody has any that they want to get in under the gun, let me know. Question 7. Who is your favorite person / brand / influencer to follow? So go ahead and give some love to who you like to watch on Snapchat.
You want to take this first?
I feel like somebody asked me that the other day, and I feel like every time people ask me this question, I get in trouble because there's going to be somebody out there that we're trying to work with. They'll be like, "Why am I not your favorite Snapchatter? You didn't ask me to do this." I just want to say that to anybody who watches this, if you're somebody who we've interacted with, and I've personally interacted with on Snapchat, you're one of my favorite Snapchatters. So that goes for everybody out there, and too many names to list. I'm going to give you 3 names right now. I'm going to say shout out to Taylor Nikolai. I just saw that he favorited one of my tweets. Taylor is an unsung Snapchat influencer who tells really cool stories, and people don't give him enough credit for that. I think that, obviously, like you mentioned, Tristan Tales is doing some great stuff. Danny Burke is doing great stuff. Celia Snap, Afroamericano, Mike Platko, Evan Garber, Cyrene, Mark K. Just too many names. All of those are great snappers, and I would encourage you to check them all out.
Real quick, Nick, do you happen to have like a list or like a anywhere like of the influencers that you've worked with or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, brands that, if brands work with us, they can go on to brands.delmondo.com and they can see kind of what the platform offers and see some videos like from Cyrene and others of content that they've created. But then if a brand wants to work with us, they generally, get access to a full database, and we do have what we think is the deepest database of native Snapchatters like Cyrene on the market today. So it's something that we'll share, and we share lists and create things and talk with us, and we can teach you more.
For me, to answer that question, I created a website, the11second.com, which features a lot of people that I really enjoy their Snapchats with. So you can visit that site and you can see my list.
Very good, very good. And yeah, I don't know if we tweeted it out yet, but just obviously the 11second.com, and then I know on the 11second.com we have the link to that Taylor Swift Bad Blood thing. So for all of those that want to take a look at that, I'm sure we'll tweet that out, and that'll be tweeted out. Sherry and Chris, I'm interested to hear who you guys really think, just like on a more personal level.
You already know mine because I share it all the time, and that's actually Tristan because his snaps actually crack me up all the time. Between the puppet critiquing fashion in Vogue or whichever fashion magazine he was going through and his top 5 Tuesdays every week, I don't know, his snaps are just always really funny for me.
I like funny people. On Twitter, I put my answer as Ben Phillips because I can't pick three people or brands, but Ben is the person who actually is responsible. For those of you who actually look at my snaps, you can blame Ben because he's the one who taught me how to use Snapchat and how to actually find some cool people to follow and get some ideas and enjoy the snaps that other people were doing. So I definitely recommend following him because he's a lot of fun. I enjoy Chris McEwen also, and I love Blake Croft. He cracks me up on the regular. His handle is Blake C432. He does a Sad Singing Sunday where he gets people to send him snaps of singing really badly, and then he like mashes them into a story, and it's hilarious. So I enjoy that kind of stuff. And for brands, I will shout out Cinnabon. For brand.
Whoop whoop. I'm for me, obviously, like Tristan is somebody that I follow. Like I follow a lot of my friends and stuff like that tell cool stories. Brian Fanzo is always a good time, just because you never know where in the world Fanzo is going to be. You can just tell by his Snapchat filters. Another one for me is because I am a huge sports fan. So I found out that more and more teams I see are actually getting on Snapchat. So during the baseball season, Major League Baseball did a fantastic job of really like sort of taking you behind the scenes and that kind of stuff, like on the field, and let somebody take over the snap, like a player take over the Snapchat for the the day or the pregame or that kind of stuff, and that's always really fun. So I follow like the Tigers and the Red Wings. Sports Center is always a good one, just to sort of get that behind the scenes for sure. And then I shouted them out before, but Taco Bell I think does an amazing job. They're definitely a company that would have enough money to be able to put their story on like the Discover feature, but they don't, and they tell a really awesome story with the way they do it. And I always get excited when I get on and I'm like, oh sweet, another Taco Bell story's out there. It's like I can't, like sometimes I've gone and I've gotten Taco Bell just because I saw it and I'm like, I could probably get a Crunchwrap Supreme right now. So I go in and I do that.
Yeah, the media companies have done a really good job. The sports teams, the media brands, television shows, they've done a great job so far.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So we've got about 3 minutes left. So if you guys want to give, I know we've had some people ask about tools, about ways that you can replay your snaps and bring that in. I know Snapchat's not always keen necessarily on third-party stuff, but what are some tips or tricks that you have for people, whether they want to be influencers or brands, just easy ways for people to be able to level up their Snapchat game? What do you guys think?
The first quick and easy way is, I think, that leveraging your contacts and looking at who actually is in your friend circle. A lot of people are hesitant about like connecting with apps, I know, but one of the biggest ways that I've started on Snapchat is actually finding a lot of my friends outside of the original circle, and so that's a good way to do that. And if you're a brand, I think Carlos Gill made a good video about this. There are some other ways where maybe you can like look at your Facebook friend list and sync that over and be able to see who's on Facebook that's also on Snapchat. That's a quick way. I'd also recommend promoting your Snapchat QR code everywhere. Put it on swag, put it on stickers, put it on mugs, or stick it on telephone poles. Run paid Facebook ads against it or paid Instagram ads against it. Think about those different visual mobile platforms that somebody could quickly snap your QR code or hop over to the Snapchat app themselves.
From a creative point of view, I guess just tell a story, and then tell a story that means something to you, because if it doesn't mean anything to you, then people are going to notice, and then your story isn't going to be as well told as everything. Also, I would recommend connecting with other Snapchatters. We have a really small Snapchat community, but we want the community to grow, and so we're going to talk to you. We're going to give you advice, and so just reach out to one of us, and we could potentially collaborate with you and just have fun and see what we can do with the platform.
Fantastic. Great stuff, guys. Big thanks to Nick and Cyrene for being here and sharing all of your wonderful wisdom today. This has been a lot of fun. If you pay attention, we tweeted out, like, my CMGR tweeted out, like, people's snap codes. There's a bunch of us on there. I know that you guys are on there, so make sure that you follow them via that. And then, connect and snap away. Sherry, what do we actually have coming up next week for a topic?
Next week, we're talking with John O'Bacon on how different behavioral research impacts the way that we build community workflows. So should be really good. And then in addition to that, don't forget CMAT is in 45 days. So, and one last thing is make sure you tell Kristen happy birthday.
Oh, it's Kristen's birthday. Everybody tweet at her. Or sing and snap it at her. All right, thanks a lot for joining, guys. If you have any topic ideas, make sure you go to myCMGR and click participate, and maybe we can get you on a panel. And other than that, have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.